Tale of the Wazir and the Sage Duban. Know, O thou Ifrit, that in days of yore and in ages long gone before, a king called Yunan reigned over the city of Fars of the land of Roum. He was a powerful ruler and a wealthy, who had armies and guards and allies of all the nations of men, but his body was afflicted with a leprosy which leeches and men of science failed to heal. He drank potions, and he swallowed powders, and he used unguents, but naught did him good, and none among the host of physicians availed to procure him a cure. At last there came to his city a mighty healer of men, and one well stricken in years, the sage Duban hight. This man was a reader of books, Greek, Persian, Roman, Arabian, and Syrian, and he was skilled in astronomy and in leechcraft, the theoric as well as the practic. He was experienced in all that healeth and that hurteth the body, conversant with the virtues of every plant, grass, and herb, and their benefit and bane, and he understood philosophy, and had compassed the whole range of medical science and other branches of the knowledge tree. Now this physician passed but few days in the city ere he heard of the king's malady, and all his bodily sufferings through the leprosy with which Allah had smitten him, and how all the doctors and wise men had failed to heal him. Upon this he sat up through the night in deep thought, and when broke the dawn and appeared the morn, and light was again born, and the sun greeted the good whose beauties the world adorn, he donned his handsomest dress, and going in to King Yunan he kissed the ground before him. Then he prayed for the endurance of his honour and prosperity in fairest language, and made himself known, saying, "O King, tidings have reached me of what befell thee through that which is in thy person, and how the host of physicians have proved themselves unavailing to abate it. And lo! I can cure thee, O King, and yet will I not make thee drink of draught or anoint thee with ointment." Now when King Yunan heard his words he said in huge surprise, "How wilt thou do this? By Allah, if thou make me whole, I will enrich thee even to thy son's son, and I will give thee sumptuous gifts, and whatso thou wishest shall be thine, and thou shalt be to me a cup companion and a friend." The King then robed him with a dress of honour, and entreated him graciously, and asked him, "Canst thou indeed cure me of this complaint without drug and unguent?" And he answered, "Yes, I will heal thee without the pains and penalties of medicine." The King marvelled with exceeding marvel and said, "O physician, when shall this be whereof thou speakest, and in how many days shall it take place? Haste thee, O my son." He replied, "I hear and I obey. The cure shall begin to morrow." So saying he went forth from the presence and hired himself a house in the city for the better storage of his books and scrolls, his medicines and his aromatic roots. Then he set to work at choosing the fittest drugs and simples, and he fashioned a bat hollow within and furnished with a handle without, for which he made a ball, the two being prepared with consummate art. On the next day, when both were ready for use and wanted nothing more, he went up to the King and, kissing the ground between his hands, bade him ride forth on the parade ground, there to play at pal and mal. He was accompanied by his suite, Emirs and Chamberlains, Wazirs and Lords of the realm, and ere he was seated the sage Duban came up to him and, handing him the bat, said, "Take this mal and grip it as I do, so; and now push for the plain, and leaning well over thy horse drive the ball with all thy might until thy palm be moist and thy body perspire. Then the medicine will penetrate through thy palm and will permeate thy person. When thou hast done with playing and thou feelest the effects of the medicine, return to thy palace and make the Ghusl ablation in the Hammam bath and lay thee down to sleep. So shalt thou become whole. And now peace be with thee." Thereupon King Yunan took the bat from the sage and grasped it firmly; then, mounting steed, he drove the ball before him and galloped after it till he reached it, when he struck it with all his might, his palm gripping the bat handle the while. and he ceased not malling the ball till his hand waxed moist and his skin, perspiring, imbibed the medicine from the wood. Then the sage Duban knew that the drugs had penetrated his person and bade him return to the palace and enter the Hammam without stay or delay. So King Yunan forthright returned and ordered them to clear for him the bath. They did so, the carpet spreaders making all haste and the slaves all hurry, and got ready a change of raiment for the King. He entered the bath and made the total ablution long and thoroughly, then donned his clothes within the Hammam and rode therefrom to his palace, where he lay down and slept. Such was the case with King Yunan; but as regards the sage Duban, he returned home and slept as usual, and when morning dawned he repaired to the palace and craved audience. The King ordered him to be admitted. Then, having kissed the ground between his hands, in allusion to the King, he recited these couplets with solemn intonation. Happy is eloquence when thou art named her sire, but mourns she when as other man the title claim. O Lord of fairest presence, whose illuming rays clear off the fogs of doubt, aye veiling deeds high famed. Ne'er cease thy face to shine like dawn and rise of morn, and never show Time's face with heat of ire inflamed. Thy grace hath favoured us with gifts that worked such wise as rain clouds raining on the hills by words inframed. Freely thou lavishedst thy wealth to rise on high, till won from time the heights whereat thy grandeur aimed. Now when the sage ceased reciting, the King rose quickly to his feet and fell on his neck. Then, seating him by his side, he bade dress him in a sumptuous dress, for it had so happened that when the King left the Hammam he looked on his body and saw no trace of leprosy. The skin was all clean as virgin silver. He joyed thereat with exceeding joy, his breast broadened with delight, and he felt thoroughly happy. Presently, when it was full day, he entered his audience hall and sat upon the throne of his kingship, whereupon his chamberlains and grandees flocked to the presence, and with them the sage Duban. Seeing the leach, the King rose to him in honour and seated him by his side. Then the food trays furnished with the daintiest viands were brought and the physician ate with the King, nor did he cease companying him all that day. Moreover, at nightfall he gave the physician Duban 2000 gold pieces, besides the usual dress of honour and other gifts galore, and sent him home on his own steed. After the sage had fared forth, King Yunan again expressed his amazement at the leach's art, saying, "This man medicined my body from without, nor anointed me with aught of ointments. By Allah, surely this is none other than consummate skill. I am bound to honour such a man with rewards and distinction, and take him to my companion and my friend during the remainder of my days." So King Yunan passed the night in joy and gladness, for that his body had been made whole and had thrown off so pernicious a malady. On the morrow the King went forth from his serraglio and sat upon his throne, and the lords of his state stood about him, and the Emirs and Wazirs sat as was their wont on his right hand and on his left. Then he asked for the sage Duban, who came in and kissed the ground before him, when the King rose to greet him and, seating him by his side, ate with him and wished him long life. Moreover, he robed him and gave him gifts and ceased not conversing with him until night approached. Then the King ordered him, by way of salary, 5 dresses of honour and 1,000 dinars. The physician returned to his own house full of gratitude to the King. Now when next morning dawned, the King repaired to his audience hall, and his lords and nobles surrounded him, and his chamberlains and his ministers, as the white encloseth the black of the eye. Now the King had a Wazir among his Wazirs, unsightly to look upon, an ill omened spectacle, sordid, ungenerous, full of envy and evil will. When this minister saw the King place the physician near him and give him all these gifts, he jaloused him and planned to do him harm, as in the saying on such subject, envy lurks in everybody, and the saying, oppression hideth in every heart, power revealeth it, and weakness concealeth it. Then the Minister came before the King and, kissing the ground between his hands, said, O King of the age and of all time, thou in whose benefits I have grown to manhood, I have weighty advice to offer thee, and if I withhold it I were a son of adultery and no true born man. Wherefore, an thou order me to disclose it, I will do so forthwith. Quoth the King, and he was troubled at the words of the Minister, and what is this counsel of thine? Quoth he, O glorious monarch, the wise of old have said, whoso regardeth not the end hath not fortune to friend, and indeed I have lately seen the King on far other than the right way, for he lavisheth largesse on his enemy, on one whose object is the decline and fall of his kingship. To this man he hath shown favour, honouring him with over honour and making of him an intimate. Wherefore I fear for the King's life. The King, who was much troubled and changed colour, asked, Whom dost thou suspect, and anent whom dost thou hint? And the Minister answered, O King, an thou be asleep, wake up. I point to the physician Duban. Rejoined the King, Fie upon thee! This is a true friend who is favoured by me above all men, because he cured me with some thing which I held in my hand, and he healed my leprosy, which had baffled all physicians. Indeed, he is one whose like may not be found in these days, no, not in the whole world, from furthest east to utmost west. And it is of such a man thou sayest such hard sayings. Now from this day forward I allot him a settled solde and allowances, every month 1,000 gold pieces, and were I to share with him my realm, 'twere but a little matter. Perforce I must suspect that thou speakest on this wise from mere envy and jealousy, as they relate of the King Sindibad."—And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day and ceased saying her permitted say. Then quoth Dunyazad, "O my sister, how pleasant is thy tale and how tasteful, how sweet and how grateful!" She replied, "And where is this compared with what I could tell thee on the coming night, if the King deign spare my life?" Then said the King in himself, "By Allah, I will not slay her until I hear the rest of her tale, for truly it is wondrous." So they rested that night in mutual embrace until the dawn. Then the King went forth to his hall of rule, and the Wazir and the troops came in, and the audience chamber was thronged, and the King gave orders and judged and appointed and deposed and bade and forbade during the rest of that day, till the court broke up, and King Shahryar returned to his palace. When it was the 5th night, her sister said, "Do you finish for us thy story, if thou be not sleepy." And she resumed, "It hath reached me, O auspicious King and mighty monarch, that King Yunan said to his Minister, O Wazir, thou art one whom the evil spirit of envy hath possessed because of this physician, and thou plottest for my putting him to death, after which I should repent me full sorely, even as repented King Sindibad for killing his falcon." Quoth the Wazir, "Pardon me, O King of the age, how was that?" So the King began the story of King Sindibad and his Falcon. It is said, but Allah is all knowing, that there was a King of the King of Fars, who was fond of pleasuring and diversion, especially coursing and hunting. He had reared a falcon which he carried all night on his fist, and whenever he went a chasing he took with him this bird, and he bade make for her a golden cuplet hung around her neck to give her drink therefrom. One day, as the King was sitting quietly in his palace, behold, the high falconer of the household suddenly addressed him, "O King of the age, this is indeed a day fit for birding." The King gave orders accordingly and set out taking the hawk on fist, and they fared merrily forwards till they met a wady, where they planted a circle of nets for the chase, when lo! a gazelle came within the toils and the King cried, "Whoso alloweth yon gazelle to spring over his head and loseth her, that man will I surely slay." They narrowed the nets about the gazelle when she drew near the king's station, and planting herself on her hind quarter, crossed her forehand over her breast, as if about to kiss the earth before the king. He bowed his brow low in acknowledgment to the beast, when she bounded high over his head and took the way of the waist. Thereupon the king turned towards his troops and seeing them winking and pointing at him, he asked, "O Wazir, what are my men saying?" And the Minister answered, "They say thou didst proclaim that whoso alloweth the gazelle to spring over his head, that man shall be put to death." Quoth the king, "Now, by the life of my head, I will follow her up till I bring her back." So he set off, galloping on the gazelle's trail, and gave not over tracking till he reached the foothills of a mountain chain, where the quarry made for a cave. Then the king cast off at it the falcon which presently caught it up and swooping down drove her talons into its eyes, bewildering and blinding it; and the king drew his mace and struck a blow which rolled the game over. He then dismounted and, after cutting the antelope's throat and flaying the body, hung it to the pommel of his saddle. Now the time was that of the siesta, and the wold was parched and dry, nor was any water to be found anywhere, and the king thirsted and his horse also. So he went about searching till he saw a tree dropping water as it were melted butter from its boughs. Thereupon the king, who wore gauntlets of skin to guard him against poisons, took the cup from the hawk's neck, and filling it with the water set it before the bird, and lo! the falcon struck it with her pounces and upset the liquid. The king filled it a second time with the dripping drops, thinking his hawk was thirsty, but the bird again struck at the cup with her talons and overturned it. Then the king waxed wroth with the hawk and, filling the cup a third time, offered it to his horse, but the hawk upset it with a flirt of wings. Quoth the king, "Allah confound thee, thou unluckiest of flying things! Thou keepest me from drinking and thou deprivest thyself also and the horse." So he struck the falcon with his sword and cut off her wing. But the bird raised her head and said by signs, "Look at that which hangeth on the tree." The king lifted up his eyes accordingly and caught sight of a brood of vipers whose poisoned drops he mistook for water. Thereupon he repented him of having struck off his falcon's wing, and mounting horse fared on with the dead gazelle till he arrived at the camp, his starting place. He threw the quarry to the cook, saying, "Take and broil it," and sat down on his chair, the falcon being still on his fist, when suddenly the bird gasped and died. Whereupon the king cried out in sorrow and remorse for having slain that falcon, which had saved his life. Now this is what occurred in the case of King Sindibad, and I am assured that were I to do as thou desirest, I should repent even as the man who killed his parrot. Quoth the Wazir, "And how was that?" And the king began to tell the tale of the husband and the parrot. A certain man, and a merchant to boot, had married a fair wife, a woman of perfect beauty and grace, symmetry and loveliness, of whom he was mad jealous, and who contrived successfully to keep him from travel. At last, an occasion compelling him to leave her, he went to the bird market and bought him for 100 gold pieces a she parrot, which he set in his house to act as duenna, expecting her to acquaint him on his return with what had passed during the whole time of his absence; for the bird was kenning and cunning, and never forgot what she had seen and heard. Now his fair wife had fallen in love with a young Turk, who used to visit her, and she feasted him by day and lay with him by night. When the man had made his journey and won his wish, he came home, and at once causing the parrot to be brought to him, questioned her concerning the conduct of his consort whilst he was in foreign parts. Quoth she, "Thy wife hath a man friend who passed every night with her during thine absence." Thereupon the husband went to his wife in a violent rage and bashed her with a bashing severe enough to satisfy anybody. The woman, suspecting that one of the slave girls had been tattling to the master, called them together and questioned them upon their oaths, when all swore that they had kept the secret, but that the parrot had not, adding, "And we heard her with our own ears." Upon this the woman bade one of the girls to set a hand mill under the cage and grind therewith, and a second to sprinkle water through the cage roof, and a third to run about right and left, dashing a mirror of bright steel through the livelong night. Next morning, when the husband returned home after being entertained by one of his friends, he bade bring the parrot before him, and asked what had taken place whilst he was away. "Pardon me, O my master," quoth the bird, "I could neither hear nor see aught by reason of the exceeding murk and the thunder and lightning which lasted throughout the night." As it happened to be the summer tide, the master was astounded and cried, "But we are now in mid Tammuz, and this is not the time for rains and storms." "Ay, by Allah," rejoined the bird, "I saw with these eyes what my tongue hath told thee." Upon this the man, not knowing the case nor smoking the plot, waxed exceeding wroth and, holding that his wife had been wrongously accused, put forth his hand and, pulling the parrot from her cage, dashed her upon the ground with such force that he killed her on the spot. Some days afterwards one of his slave girls confessed to him the whole truth, yet would he not believe it till he saw the young Turk, his wife's lover, coming out of her chamber, when he bared his blade and slew him by a blow on the back of the neck; and he did the same by the adulteress, and thus the twain, laden with mortal sin, went straightways to eternal fire. Then the merchant knew that the parrot had told him the truth anent all she had seen, and he mourned grievously for her loss, when mourning availed him not. The Minister, hearing the words of King Yunan, rejoiced, "O monarch high in dignity, and what harm have I done him, or what evil have I seen from him that I should compass his death? I would not do this thing save to serve thee, and soon shalt thou sight that it is right, and if thou accept my advice thou shalt be saved; otherwise thou shalt be destroyed even as a certain Wazir who acted treacherously by the young Prince." Asked the King, "How was that?" and the Minister thus began: The Tale of the Prince and the Ogress.